Okay, we're off and running. Welcome, everyone. Week 1 workshop for international aid and development. And it's fantastic to see 5 people join live. Thanks very much, guys, for joining live. I'm really happy about that. So I'll just start going through. I've already had a bit of a chat before I put the recording on. So I think everyone okay for me? There was no burning questions for anyone that's here live right now. I can sort of go ahead and you can stop me as I proceed if something comes up. Is that all right? Yeah, got a thumbs up there from Grace and yep, a couple of head shake from Charles. Yeah, maybe it's all right. Great. Well, okay, well, I'll launch into it. You just stop me anywhere. So I just want to say tonight I'm up in northern Brisbane. So I'm actually on what they call up here, it's Yuggawurrul country, First Nations country, Yuggawurrul. And yeah, so I'd just like to acknowledge First Nations elders past, present and emerging to start the workshop. And do we have people in Sydney, out of Sydney? Uh, I think I know Grace is down south of Sydney, right, Grace? You're an hour away that way.
Yeah, that's UN land.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yep. Ewan land, is it? Yep. And other people, where are you guys? If you know the country, that's good. But what are you in Sydney or out of Sydney? Other people?
I'm in Sydney, but I can't remember the land. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. You can always just Google it. If you
Yeah,
Google, and where are you, Charles?
From Sydney, the side of Campbelltown.
Campbelltown. Okay, southwest Sydney there. I know Lavangi's in Sydney and Mavish, where are you?
I'm from the Western Sydney, Daruk land.
Durrig, yeah, the Western Sydney's Durrig land. I think that goes up towards the Blue
Yeah.
Mountains even. Yep, fantastic. All right. All right, so we've already sort of done that. Got your name and where you are. So just has anybody got any maybe international work experience or just community development work experience? Has anybody done any community development or maybe even international work? Anybody got any experience in this area? Anybody done any community development type work before? It's all sort of new to you? It's all pretty new? Because yeah, we will actually tap in a lot into community development strategies, but very much with the flavour of an international. Well, by the end of this subject, you will have some good theory anyway. And some, yeah, we will you also have a chance to critically analyze projects. So you won't just have theory, you'll also be able to have, you also have some experience around projects of international development. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. So I just like to do a quick brainstorm before we start, just from the top of your mind. I can see some people have mentioned some challenges in their posts this past couple of days on the Moodle for week 1, but just from the top of your head, what do you think some of the challenges to doing international aid and development work might be? Any ideas? There's no wrong answer, just anything. What do you think some of the challenges might be?
A changing geopolitical climate, like with what happened with USAID.
Wow, that's a massive challenge. Has anybody heard about what happened with USAID? Other than you, Grace? Does anyone know what happened with USAID or what USAID is? No?
Was the USA cutting off all the aids? Was it that?
Yeah. So USAID is the department, well, it was the department that funded international aid and development projects. The American department, of course, USAID, and they were huge, probably actually, I'm not quite sure, but at least a third or even up to close to 40% of all international aid was from US aid, and that department is closed. It's just suddenly closed in over a few months. I was recently back where I used to work on the border of Burma and Thailand, and I would say about 50% of the projects that were running along the borderline there in the refugee camps, for example, were closed. So lots of NGO workers lost their jobs and lots of projects have just stopped because the funding stopped. So yeah, massive challenge is that is an ongoing challenge, Grace, that you've mentioned. And I guess funding in general has always been a challenge, aid development projects getting funding. Any others that people can think? Thanks, Grace. Any others that people could think of? Any other challenges that come to mind when you think about international aid and development? Any other ideas?
Something that not sure if it's correct, but I come from a country that had a war for about 30 years, and so something that I always think about is how does a terrorist group get the funds to go that long, for weapons and all of that? Because that's a small group. Where do they get the funding for that? So, yeah, that's one.
Yeah. Great, massive. What a challenge. Working in countries where there's an ongoing war, whether it's across borders or civil war, a real,
Alison,
massive
Tamau?
challenge. Yes, Charles. Did you want to make a comment about challenges?
Background.
Background, yes. Can you say a bit more about that?
A background and a culture.
Okay, yes. Yep. So yeah, one of the great challenges. So I'll just go back to you, Lavangi, and then about like for example, when I worked in in Burma, there was a lot of armed militias, different armed militias in Burma, Lavangi, maybe like what you're talking about. And they weren't affiliated with the government. They were just armed militias, and some of them raised funds in very dubious ways, including producing drugs like methamphetamine. And so this is a great challenge for us if we are working in these sorts of communities. So yeah, thanks, Lavangi. And yes, Charles, I think what Charles mentioned too, working cross-culturally. So yeah, that's also a huge challenge for workers. And I think Charles meant background. So knowing the background of the community of the country first, the history, and then maybe knowing and then drilling down to the actual community that you might be working in or supporting. Is that what you meant when you said background, Charles? Or
Oh
did you?
yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And cultural, you mean working
Yes.
cultures that maybe
Working,
not.
yeah, working with the group, but as you said, start with the country first, the history of the country, and down into the different groups of or tribes, or yeah.
Yep. And I think, yeah. Oh, Lavangi, go ahead. Yes.
I just forgot I read something. It was about the Afghan women and girls that the Taliban they stopped international aid, so they have become they can't join any NGOs, so they are further disadvantaged. So yeah, so there are no education. So if not for profits, they can't reach them to help them and support them.
Yep. Massive challenge, Lavangi. Yeah, that happened in Afghanistan. It happened when I was in Burma. When I was in Burma, I could only travel to places that the government approved. So I was approved to stay in in a particular town in the office, but if I wanted to go out to the villages where the actual project was being run in remote village, it was a disability project. I needed permission to go there, and most time it was denied. So yeah, you get restricted access, or the actual aid is restricted to get in, or the local people are restricted to participate, which is what you're talking about with girls and women. And we have this big standoff right now in Gaza, which there's the aid is not being allowed in, is being restricted to in. So massive challenges about access. And I think just to go back to something Charles mentioned is I think you almost were getting to it, Charles, but what do you think about this? What colonialism? Does anybody know? Everybody knows what colonialism, right? Yeah. Do you think this is still relevant to our topic today? I can see Grace nodding her head. Why do you think, Grace?
Because colonialism caused impacts that we still see today, especially with resource management. So I've stuck something in the chat that might answer Lavangi's question, at least partially, about why things happen sometimes. But say in places that have, I guess, been colonized, but where that impact, or where the I can't think of the word, but where the influence is now gone, or the colonizers themselves are gone, they've left behind a damaged structure where people don't know how to manage their resources, or in leaving, they've created a power vacuum that's been filled with corruption and people who don't have the country's best interests at heart.
Absolutely. So it's still massively relevant. And the other thing that I found when I used to work overseas, I was working for a major French NGO, and I'm not singling out the French, but it was an international NGO, a French one. And at times I felt a bit uncomfortable because I felt like they were still acting like colonizers. Even though they were an international NGO with good intentions, they were still very controlling and not really handing over complete control to the communities to run a project, if you know what I mean. So it's still, the history is really important. Um, the background, like Charles mentioned, to understand if a country was colonized or not. That you need to think about that, and then it's about the organization you work for. Do they get that? And there's a new, and we'll talk about it more as we go through the 12 weeks. One of the things that I guess progressive NGOs are doing now is they're working through a decolonization lens. And that means that every project is planned to ensure that they're not repeating past mistakes of colonization, and that they're aware of it and recognize it. So we'll talk more about that. So yeah, a massive challenge. And then the last one, we better keep moving, is we just have this globalized world, don't we? We have globalization, but we have globalization of certain things that have progressed very fast, like maybe travel, air travel, the movement of money around the world. But actually, when it comes to social justice, it hasn't actually spread as much as we would have liked from an international development perspective. So we'll talk more about that too, a great challenge. So I'll just bring some up. I'll just see if we've missed any. But yeah, there is a reading by Jim Ive this week. Now we'll look at Jim quite a bit. Jim is an Australian guy. He's getting pretty old now, but he worked in international community development for a long time, and he's retired now over in Western Australia. But there's a short reading, and there's some key challenges that in that reading are here. So yeah, have a look at those. I think, yeah, I think that's important one, the first one. there's a long history, isn't there, that aid workers came from like rich countries and developed countries. And then in brackets it says changing. What do you think might be changing there? Any ideas why I've got in brackets that that's changing? Hard question. Well, I'll give you one example. I think I recently I met a woman through work who was from Nepal, and I met her. She was the country director for Myanmar and Thailand, and I was very pleased to meet her because she's from Nepal, which some people would probably think, oh, that's a country that's received a lot of aid and development. But she's been working as a in the sector since she was a young woman, and now she's probably 50s, 60s. Incredible amount of experience. So yeah, yeah, she's not from a wealthy country, and she's in a senior position now in an NGO. So it's changing in that way. There's many workers from countries that might be, perceived as not as recipients of donor money, but they're actually highly skilled. So yeah, that's what that one means by changing. Oh, I've already mentioned the third one, that we need to work through a decolonisation lens. And I think the fourth one, people have already mentioned that in some posts about how do we know that the money that goes is and that projects are accountable for the funding, and that the funding doesn't just get swallowed up by corruption. I think you might have mentioned that, Lavangi, in a post, and you mentioned that tonight, right, Grace? Anything else there stand out that we didn't mention? What about that last one? Does that make sense? Contemporary challenge. It's quite relevant for our part of the world. There's some islands in the South Pacific that are, they're only a metre above sea level, and they're fighting, with climate change. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that great challenge that now we actually have displaced people in the world. We've always had displaced people in the world due to war and poverty and economic uh, issues, but now we've got people who are being displaced due to climate change. So that's another contemporary challenge. So lots of different challenges there. So I think some people have made posts about this already this week. But what would you say? Any comments? Just quick. We'll just do this quick because I think we've looked at it on the. What do you think the actual? What is it try? What are all these projects trying to do? What are your thoughts, just quickly? International aid and development projects. What are they trying to do? What's their intentions? Any thoughts?
Helping
Yeah.
disadvantaged and marginalized communities.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the good intentions of international aid and development, and probably intention of the UN, who are very United Nations, right? You've all heard of the United Nations, who are, and they're not always spot on, and they do make mistakes, and they're criticized highly, as they should be but their intention is probably what you said, Lavangi, support disadvantaged and marginalized communities. So I'll let you have a look at the posts about that, but I think there's a lot of good intentions around, just doing work, supporting countries that have emergencies and need development, addressing global inequality, empowering the community, yeah, and working in solidarity, supporting human rights. Now, some of these are the key, cornerstones of the UN and of international aid and development. But I think I saw in some of the posts that this is not always the case. Good intentions are not always the case. Does anybody got any comment about what, maybe bad intentions is not the right word, but what countries also who give money might be hoping to gain from that?
I'm cynical for the most part that a lot of, especially government-led programs, are just a way for the government to exercise soft power and secure their own intentions rather than helping people.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Grace. It's you're not that's just the bold facts. And that's one of the things that people are saying is what the Americans are going to lose. They had an incredible amount of soft power from the money that they gave with US aid. Yes, the money's going to be so missed by all those projects, but they actually had incredible amount of soft power. I don't know if people heard that term before, soft power. Have other people heard of that term before, soft power? It just means, like, if you give money, like USAID had money all around the world. So when you give money, yeah, it gives you a say in that community. It gives you influence in that community. That's what you mean, right, Grace? And that soft
Yep.
power, yeah, it can be used positively, or it can be used in a self-interest, power grabbing, profit grabbing, controlling way.
And I've just stuck another link in the chat about the I guess it was a real bit the vaccine campaign that the CIA launched in Pakistan to find bin Laden. That has now caused a great deal of polio vaccine hesitancy in Pakistan and the neighboring countries, which has done a great deal of harm to the population.
Right, yeah. And there's been examples of this. One of the biggest examples, I'm getting a bit old now, but I don't know if you guys remember it, but there was a really big push back in Africa in the old days with Nestle for women to use milk, powdered milk. What do you call it? Formula for babies. And that was an absolute disaster because it actually caused more diarrhea for babies and infections, and that. So this is a more contemporary example that you have given there, Grace. So there's, we have these good intentions, and then behind good intentions, though, there's often self-interest and power and profit and control. And even in my time, like, I don't want to talk about my time too much, but I worked for 8 years in international aid and development, and when I first started, we still had something in Australia called AusAid. Has anyone ever heard of AusAid? And AusAid was a standalone autonomous department within the federal government, and our foreign aid money, budget money, was given to AusAid, and AusAid could basically decide themselves where that money was spent, whether they spend so much in the Pacific, so much in Southeast Asia. But over the time that I was there, AusAid was abolished. I think it was can't remember what government, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. But it was abolished, and now all of our aid programs are under DFAT, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So we were very upset at the time. The people who were working in the field, because we knew when it went under the DFAT, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, they have basically now all money is all projects would be in line with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade strategies for what they want to achieve in the world. So we'd lost that autonomy of yeah. So and a lot of aid budgets are under the Department of Foreign Affairs, and Department of Foreign Affairs, of course, they everything's about self-interest of the country. So anyway, we'll talk more about this and unpack it. But yeah, just a interesting dilemma. Well, I might. Any quick comments or questions about that? We can move on a little bit. Just get you thinking a little bit about the good intentions, bad intentions, if you like, of foreign aid money. It's a little bit complex, but it's fascinating. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time. I've got another question for you. Now this, I don't know if this is on the, hopefully this is something a little bit different than what we've looked at on the Moodle this week. But yeah, I just want you to think about this, and we'll, just off the top of your head, it's just a brainstorm. What do you think could be the difference between an international community development practitioner and a community activist? Any ideas? What's the difference between those? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a brainstorm.
To me, I would think that an activist would come from within the community, while a development practitioner might come outside the community with a different kind of expertise.
Yeah, I think that generally that would be the case. A practitioner sort of means they may have had some training, right? Like you guys are doing a whole 12 weeks now on international aid and development, you know, and when you finish your course, you'll have a degree in community services, and you'll have a whole 12 weeks of international aid. So yeah, you will be a practitioner, no doubt about it. Trained expert to a degree, yeah. And yes, a community activist, but a person like that could come from the community, couldn't they, Grace? If they could, but generally they may not. And community activists, yes, someone probably from within. But I guess they could be an external person that comes into a community and want to rally for an issue. But yeah, I think you're onto it. Any other things that other people might think could be the difference between these people? What about what sort of skills or knowledge they might have, networks they might have? Any differences there? Anyone else got any thoughts about that? If you think about a community activist who's based in a community, what might they?
Would a community activist be fighting for something like with change? I don't know.
Yeah,
Something.
I think you're right, Lavangi. That term activist, like instead of practitioner, it's activist. So there's something they're fighting for, something they want to change. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. And I think they probably know the issues in the community, right? They may not be highly educated, or they may be, but they know there's something not right and they want to see a change. So I think that's spot on. Well, let's have a look. Anyone else want to make a comment or move to have a look at what? I think I've got a slide on one of both. So for the practitioner, so yeah, they're trained to support disadvantaged or vulnerable communities. Like you guys, when you finish this course, you will be trained to support disadvantaged vulnerable communities in Australia and overseas because of this subject, hopefully. And also, generally, when you work for an NGO, you do have, even if you're a project officer, you do have some influence and you have some access to funds and resources and training. Practitioners do often have access to that, and we can be gatekeepers to funding and training for community members. But yeah, trained with technical expertise, and yeah, we facilitate education and if, as you'll see from Jim Ive, who I mentioned tonight, Jim Ive would say practitioners who are sticking to, I guess, principles of in community development, they would believe that the community are at the heart of a process of any project. So let's have a look at the activists now. So I think there it's got activist leader. So often community activists can be leaders already in the community, or they could be potential leaders. So that's something to think about. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this already. They might know the issues. They'll know the strengths of the community, and they may know some of the weaknesses of communities as well, but they'll certainly know what the issues are, what the challenges are, what the strengths are. And they might be in a better position than a practitioner to develop communities from within. They may have a better chance of leading change, which is what Lavangi mentioned about change before. And they might not be trained formally, but they may have local skills and knowledge. So I think I just wanted to sow some seeds about that, because why do you think I might want to just mention that about these two roles? Why do you think I'm mentioning it tonight, just quickly? Well, if you're the practitioners, your potential practitioners, what do you think about community activists or leaders? What do you think would be important?
Maybe they may end up working together on a project.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, that's right. We need to work with them, right? We need to collaborate with them, and we need to actually treat them as equals, because yes, we might have some expertise and we're trained formally, but their expertise and knowledge is as valuable, if not more, than ours. So yeah, we need to work together. Yeah, it's a lot easier said than done, I tell you. Not only for the practitioner's point of view that they truly believe that, but projects sometimes don't always allow for that. Project timelines, especially projects that are in a project management type cycle, it's that type of project management cycle doesn't always allow for us to work truly with activists or with community members. Yeah. How am I going for time? Oh, we've still got a little bit of time. So we'll keep moving ahead, okay? Sorry about all these questions. But yeah, I know we've only just started, but just thinking, what would you say? We've probably touched on some already tonight. We've mentioned a few. And yeah, probably we just mentioned then a key strategy might, working with community members, working with activists is an example of a key strategy. Any other things come to mind that you think might be key strategies for working in international aid and development? Maybe some key areas, ways of working, key theories that we might use. Some of them are the same that we use for all community services work. Any ideas?
Strengths-based practices and relying on local knowledge. So if a community is, say, struggling with food insecurity, we might turn to the elders of the community and focus on their understanding of farming, agriculture, and livestock to try and develop food security from within the community, rather than them always relying on international assistance.
Yeah, great example, Grace. And you mentioned the strengths-based approach. And that's, we use that when we work with people with disability. We use that when we work with refugees or young people. We use that, and we need to know their context, don't we? Absolutely. There, that's a good one. I think that's one of the ones I was thinking, strengths-based approach. Any other ideas that might be key strategies? What about the theory? Like when we work in community services, what's the main theory that underpins all our work in 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 community services, any sector? What do you think would be one of the main theories that I think you would have talked about theories in working in community services or specialist communication. You would have done those subjects. When we work with disadvantaged groups and marginalized people, what's the theory that underpins working with marginalized groups or disadvantaged groups in the community? Any ideas?
Well, safety, communication, or
Yeah, safety, communication,
Empowering.
empowerment,
Human rights.
human rights. That's right. I think it's human rights and social justice, right? You all heard that before, right? Social justice. That's what we're all about. Community services is just about social justice, isn't it? Providing opportunities for people that are disadvantaged and marginalized. Same, absolutely same but it might be even more, I guess, to the fore. But yeah, human rights and social justice is just, these are key strategies. And that's why we have, why we still tap into the UN despite its problems and issues. The UN still does, its intention is to protect human rights and to work in a social justice manner. And yeah, but in the international arena, we also, most or if not all projects now, they must think about the ecology, the environment that they're working in, and think about sustainability. So this is also a key. So you will look at these. Don't worry, we're going to look at social justice theory, ecology, and sustainability theory. We'll probably start looking at it next week. And yeah, you already mentioned empowerment, and you've already mentioned about, we've already talked about the local community, working with, including the participation of local organisations and people, strengths-based approach, working with local community leadership, and I think it's already come up about social change. So and we'll also look at some different theories and models of social change in this subject as well. So yeah, we'll unpack all this stuff. It's just this week we're just starting to get a flavour of what international aid and development is and what this subject's going to be about. So yeah, I think that's probably enough for tonight. I just wanted to let you know, yeah, please keep in contact with me. People that have worked with me before, I'm more than happy to get your emails and I'll reply to you. I'm more than happy to meet online and talk on the phone. So just get in contact with me if you've got any questions about the curriculum or something you don't understand or your assessments. More than happy to talk. So I think we finished a little bit early. Is that all right?
Yep.
Any
Thank you
quick-
very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Any
Thank
quick? Yeah,
Thank
please.
you.
Thanks, Mark.
See you
Thank you.
See you next week. I hope.
See you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
All right then. Bye. Bye,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
Have a good
Oh.
night.
Yeah. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Grace.